I mentioned earlier that there's sort of two questions on the table when we think about, or at least when I was thinking this through for myself a while back. And that's, do we have an accurate copy? Because when I was in my skeptical progressive class, the pastor was saying things like, we don't even know what they wrote, because he said there's hundreds of thousands of mistakes between the manuscript tradition. I mean, we're not even talking about whether or not they told the truth. We're talking about, do we even have a copy of what they had? And this was actually, for me personally, one of the most rattling things to my own
Yeah.
personal faith, because I had built my whole life on the Bible and then thinking, well, I don't even have an accurate copy of what the Bible even is. So how can we approach that question and think that through?
Well, there are lots of things to say about that. I would say you've got to make sure people don't play mathematical tricks on you.
Mm,
So if you imagine that there were, instead of just 8 billion people on the planet, there were 8 trillion or something, and everyone were to copy out the Bible, then by hand, there would be more mistakes in the manuscripts than if there are only 8 billion or only 8 million people copying them out. Would that mean that overall you were less certain about the text that you were copying? Not at all. If you have 80,000 people in a stadium seeing an event, they may have differences in their accounts of it. If you only have one person seeing it, there won't be no differences. Does that mean that something witnessed by 80,000 people is somehow less certain than something witnessed by one? So that's where I think people can play these mathematical tricks. And Bart Ehrman does that when he starts bringing in the number of copying mistakes that people have made over history, which is really a factor of how many scribes there are. And how many copies you have. That's the sort of thing that will feed into that, not the level of actual confidence you have in the text of the Bible. Now, what I'd say is look at the, say, opening verses of John's Gospel. What's striking there is that we have lots of manuscripts and they don't have significant differences. Yes, there's a bit of difference over how you spell the name John, whether it's with one or two N's and this sort of thing. But you have huge unity across large stretches of text. And so, what I want to say is that this idea that we can't know is uh, a bit, yes, it's a bit strange. I've got a hearing difficulty, so sometimes when I listen to a talk, I miss some words. Does that mean I can't say anything of what the talk was about? No, it doesn't. I missed a few words. Often people will miss someone's words, or they might miss something that's going on in the film. Again, it doesn't mean that they can't understand anything. And so I think there's this slightly strange way people approach the Bible, whereas if there's one uncertain word or a word they don't understand, somehow this undermines everything because they think of the Bible like a magic spell. And I
mm.
often, and sorry, I'm going to use another Harry Potter analogy, but when you say diagonally rather than diagonally, you end up in the wrong place,
Yep.
and that's where people see it as like that. Whereas in fact, you've got a huge confidence that it doesn't matter what language you're reading the Bible in; the stories are in the same order. They have basically the same points. I mean, show it's hard for anyone to show me a copy of the Bible in which it's somehow making a fundamentally different point.
Hmm.
So that's there's a lot of confidence we can have about things. The other way I'd look at it in terms of analogy would be the ancient economy depended on copying. So just as we have cell phones nowadays, and I mean even now in this conversation we're having online, relies on you seeing and hearing a copy of me, and I have no idea how many times uh, my audio has been copied before you hear it, but um, we know that our society is built on that. That's the same with ancient scribes. Ancient scribes were there, and their job was to copy and that they normally did it very successfully. So we have delivery trucks nowadays in modern society, and without them, things wouldn't work. And of course, we know theoretically that a delivery truck can go to the wrong address. Something might not be delivered. But we also know that in the overwhelming majority of cases in our society, delivery trucks arrive where they're supposed to. And in the overwhelming majority of cases of copying in an ancient society, things got copied correctly. So this idea that somehow things got lost over time doesn't make a huge amount of sense. We also have copies all around the place, so there's not really one central control within Christianity that could um, manipulate everything. So even when you get say, powerful popes in Rome, they don't control what goes on in Constantinople. In Constantinople, they're not controlling what goes on in all the different monasteries as copies are made. Things are being copied in lots of different countries and even in different languages. So we've got the New Testament not just in the original Greek, we've got it in early Latin, we've got it in Syriac, Coptic, Gothic, and you go on through time, Armenian, Georgian, Anglo-Saxon, Arabic, and the idea that anyone was in a position to change all of these copies doesn't make any sense at all. So I think you can have a huge amount of confidence that the New Testament, the Gospels, have been well handed down to us.